Which unsolved mystery are you most interested in? Why? The Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum theft of $500 million worth of art on March 18, 1990. There's a reward of $10 million for return of the stolen art from Boston's museum. This one haunts me, especially as while it remains unsolved, I will never see Rembrandt's only seascape for myself. So much cultural history lost. Plus, how? Inside job. B. Cooper. The fact that the moment he jumped out of the 727, nothing about him was ever uncovered again. Did he die? If not, what happened to him? They found a few of the bills that were given to him into the woods over where he jumped. Where is Shelley Miscavige, and why does her creepy husband David seem to get away with everything? I think we all know David Miscavige killed his wife for trying to reveal the abuse she was dealing with at the hands of David and Sea Org members assigned to keep her under control. How many others have tried to leave only to be silenced and never heard from again? Terrifying. Malaysia Airlines Flight 370. Would do anything to learn what actually happened on that flight. This one really bothers me too. The idea that with all the sophisticated electronics we have nowadays, a massive plane can just up and disappear and we don't know where it went just astounds me. Just goes to show how big the ocean is that even a 777 can just disappear forever in its depths. What happened to Maura Murray? College girl gets in a car crash near Woodsville, New Hampshire, abandons her car and is never to be seen again. There are several theories. The most commonly agreed case is that she succumbed to the elements. This has been on my mind lately too, but mostly because I had listened to a podcast that was seemingly unrelated to Maura Murray but ended up tying into it in the end. I had already been familiar with the Maura Murray case and this kind of opened it back up to me. If you're interested, look into the deaths of Lico Kenny and Bruce McKay. Bruce McKay was a police officer on duty that night in the area that Maura disappeared. There's no official record of him going to the scene, but he was also unaccounted for I believe 4 hours that night. Plus his history as a police officer is less than stellar. I'm sorry he's dead, but the dude was corrupt and had some serious power trip issues. We all know that there's only a brief window that Maura could have disappeared. There's also discrepancies in eyewitness statements about who saw a police officer drive which direction at which time. But it was only a discrepancy because there's only record of one police officer showing up on scene. But if you add in the theory that maybe Bruce McKay got to the scene first but didn't report that, or call it in, and then got Maura to leave with him before anyone else got there, then that would make sense why someone saw a police car go past the same direction twice. It wasn't the same car, it was two different cars. Anyway, I'm paraphrasing a lot here, but when I learned about and listened to the encounter that led to the deaths of Lico Kenny and Bruce McKay, it got me looking for information about Maura. To me, there's so much wrong with how everything was handled that went missing. From which tow company was called and what they did with her car initially, to cover-ups and corruption with law enforcement. The true identity of Master Fard Muhammad. Despite having a report on him that spans several hundred pages, no one in the FBI or anywhere else can say for sure who he really was. Apart from being a street preacher who founded the Nation of Islam. He showed up in Detroit in 1930 and disappeared in 1934. Never heard of this, but it sounds very interesting. What was in the chamber under the Sphinx? There are a lot of undeciphered languages out there. A large portion are because the languages either grew up in isolation or didn't leave any descendants. I often wonder what those languages recorded that we've never seen. That's deep. There is so much lost information to time. Kind of crazy what we don't know. I think people know what they think happened, but Madeleine McCann. I've always hoped for an outcome, but as it was massive news. Who do you think did it? The parents? I think it was an accident, but I think they covered it up. I just want to know where Amelia Earhart is, man. I think she was eaten by crabs on that desert island. Oh man, that's awful. Biggie Smalls murder. Who killed him and why? I already know who killed Tupac. Years ago I read a book, Murder Rap, by the LAPD detective that was assigned to investigate Biggie's death after his mom sued. I think it's somewhat controversial and disbelieved by various parties, but as I recall his conclusions were that Puffy put a bounty on Tupac's head that may have been a motive as to why LA-based Crips killed Tupac and that Suge had Bloods kill Biggie in retaliation. The fact so many people around her keep dying is really suspicious. This is one of the most bizarre cases I have ever read. Between her missing kids, the suspicious deaths around her, and the doomsday cult. This is one Hallmark movie in the making. Lifetime movie. Hallmark movies have happy endings. The Dyatlov Pass incident. What happened? What went wrong? What was so urgent that they cut themselves out of their tent and ran out into a snowstorm? And what caused their injuries? What creature could do such damage? The world won't know. All we can do is guess. Maybe one day they'll find the truth. Or maybe this will go down as an unsolved mystery to the end. From you, Schnit 123, above read Dead Mountain by Donnie Icar. He provides by far the most plausible explanation for the Dyatlov Pass incident I've ever encountered. His own theory was that they got hit by an extremely rare weather phenomenon called a Kármán vortex that can induce a state of temporary insanity. Basically, while they had this thing barreling down on them, they would have been hit by an overwhelming and inexplicable sense of panic and terror that would have caused them to flee the safety of their tent, after which they died trying to survive in the blizzard they'd just thrown themselves into. Icar consulted with one of the world's foremost experts on Kármán vortices, who confirmed that the shape of the mountain whose slope they were camping on, combined with the weather conditions of that night, were ideal for creating a Kármán vortex too. And even if you don't buy this theory, it's still a worthwhile read for anyone in the Dyatlov Pass incident, just because it will make you aware of how much misinformation gets spread around on the internet to try to make the situation seem more mysterious than it actually was. For example, people talk about how some tree branches were broken off above two of the bodies, but leave out the fact that it was because those two broke the branches themselves to start a fire, or make much out of the fact that the tongue of one of the hikers was cut out, but ignore the fact that her body had been lying face down in a creek bed for 4 months before she was found, and her face was half decomposed already. But the most infuriating of all is the amount of conspiracy mongering people do around the fact that 3 of the hikers died from blunt force trauma, while conveniently ignoring the fact that, and I'm going to switch to all caps here, they fell off a cliff. At the very least, Icar gets a lot of credit for ignoring all the conspiracy mongering and making an honest effort to try to understand what actually happened that night. I'm really about to regret Googling Kármán vortex right before bed, aren't I? Who was Jack the Ripper, and how was Damascus steel originally made? That has carbon nanotubes in them somehow. Could be wrong, but I think someone explained that the problem with Damascus steel was the metal they were using had gone away since they picked the mine clean. More than likely the exact forging didn't produce the same quality steel with other metals, and it was forgotten. If we tried to replicate the process, it probably wouldn't make the same blade since the metal is a different composition. John Benet Ramsey. I just really want to know what happened in the Ramsey house that night. That one has so many creepy suspects when you look into it. There was even this 40-ish-year-old man who claimed to be in love with her. She was 6. Who says that? Who were Epstein's co-conspirators, sicko buddies? And why did Epstein not kill himself? Delphi murders. Unfortunately, I suspect that investigation was fucked up from the beginning. That was up with the whole sketch swap thing. Welp. Guess I know how I'm spending my night. Unsolved Mysteries rabbit hole. The disappearance death of Natalie Holloway, because she lived in a neighboring city about 20 minutes away from me. Like you want to know exactly where her body is. I thought it was pretty well established that Joran van der Sloot killed her. Although I don't think he's ever been charged directly with her murder because his story keeps changing, but seems pretty obvious that he's responsible for her death. He kept trying to get paid for confessing. Then add in the fact that he killed Stephanie Flores in Peru 5 years later. Dude is a psychopath or something. I think either who Zodiac was or who killed Elizabeth Short. I think Earl Van Best Jr. was the Zodiac and Amp. I'm fairly certain that George Hodel killed Elizabeth Short. Cancerbiero's death. Probably most of you don't know about it, given that it happened in Venezuela, so I'll give you a brief explanation. Cancerbero was a famous Venezuelan rapper. In 2015, he was staying with a friend named Carlos and Carlos' wife Natalia. They had just come from a tour. One day he fell from the apartment window and died. When the police arrived, they found Carlos dead with multiple stab wounds. Natalia Cerebero was staying with them because he was dealing with schizophrenia. She said that he suddenly went into their room, stabbed Carlos to death and then jumped out of the window when he realized what he had done. Some weeks later, the case was reopened, due to some inconsistencies of the evidences in the testimony. Cancerbero's family claimed that he had no mental illness. The window's glasses had been taken out in order to fit a person through, and someone had put them on again. The $6,000 they had earned on the tour were never found. And Natalia, the only person who knew what happened, left the country a few days after the incident. Well, that doesn't sound suspicious at all. Brian Schaffer's disappearance from a bar in Columbus. There is no footage of him leaving the bar at all that night, despite there being footage of the one entrance, exit all night. He was a good-looking med student who had everything going for him, and he was 6'2". Not likely that he'd get grabbed without someone noticing or become victim to a random attack. He was never located, and his phone even rang 3 times once when dialed. His friend refuses to sit for a lie detector, and there is speculation that Columbus PD thinks he may be alive. It just feels so sinister. The Somerton man came here to say this? The whole thing is just bizarre, and it seems like the police back then just weren't actually that interested in solving it. The money pit. I just want to know what's at the bottom, even if it's just water, dirt, and logs. Top post of all time on RRBI Reddit finds that a company is using self-development as a front, and teaching rich businessmen how to get away with rape. He even found videos where the hidden camera raped women on film. The day after the post is made, the Redditor gets their account suspended and we never hear about it again. Amelia Earhart's death. She was this close to finishing her trip around the world when she went missing. Who put Bella in the white helm? It always fascinated me, mostly because of the graffiti that popped up after the body was discovered and how some people connected it to World War II spies. Do you by chance watch BuzzFeed Unsolved? Tylenol murders. That's a true mystery. I've no idea.